Hi and welcome to the Protograf channel. In this video I'll be providing a brief overview of Protograf functionality. Just a quick reminder, Protograf is a scripting program designed to allow you to code the design of a game or components of a game using a text-based language. In this video we'll be covering a number of topics, including the basic grammar and styling of shapes, the variety of shapes available, including various specialized shapes, how to deal with fonts and images, how to create grids and layouts, and then various examples including different kinds of boards, cards, money, counters, and access to the Board Game Geek. Jump right in. So this is the most basic shape you can probably create, a simple rectangle. And how is this done? Well, a script in Protograf consists of three elements. At the start, you need to import from Protograf all the functionality. That's the import star. You then create a page. In this case, you're naming it, you're giving it a file name, overview.pdf. By default, all output from Protograf is in a PDF format. You're setting the margin, and this page grid that you see, this pale blue grid line behind all of the pages here is this page grid, 2 centimeters in size, and then you're creating a rectangle. And when you finish with your script, the last thing you'll usually do is click save. So Protograf uses the concept of default. So a rectangle by default is 1 centimeter in size with a thin black line around it and a white fill. Obviously, however, you can customize that even further. So styling or customizing is done by setting properties. So properties are these attributes here. Examples, width and height. So you can see here we have a larger rectangle. Obviously there's a range of them available. So properties like fill or stroke determine the colors, the transparency. It's obvious. You can see parts of the grid behind this rectangle because it is partly transparent. And then you can change the width of the pen that you're using to draw the outline. Other properties include labels and label size. So by default, those are drawn in the center of the shape. You can also have headings and titles for additional text. Hatches are an interesting way to style a rectangle or other shape. It's a series of parallel lines running from edge to edge. In this case, we've got 5 of them. And finally, a more complex example of properties. Here we're styling the corners of the rectangle with notches. There are different styles of notches available. In this case, it's a quarter circle. And then radii shapes. We'll show some more examples of that in the next page. So this is the variety of shapes available to you, the standard geometric type shapes available in Protograf. And many of them should be recognizable from any kind of geometry class. The pod is curved lines which can be styled and moved around. The stadium includes semicircles at either end or top and below. Arrows, there's a whole variety of ways to style arrows, and as well as additional useful items like crosses or sectors. So here's some different ways of styling. This is not comprehensive, just gives a feel for what can be done. Hatches we've seen already. Radii, lines drawn from the center going outwards, either from a circle, rectangle, or hexagon. Then the concept of radii shapes. So if you imagine with the radii that you can see there, that you can place additional shapes at the endpoints or even along the radii line. Slices are triangular shapes which are typically colored to fill in part or all of a shape. Then there's more specialized properties that can be set for particular shapes. For example, petals to give a sunlight effect around a circle, or nesting a series of circles within one. Chevrons are these indented or outdented triangles. Prows are more curved shapes that extend above and below a rectangle. In terms of hexagons, there are a number of styles, but ones that could be of interest are spikes. Those can be inward or outward facing, and the whole triangle that's drawn there can be styled. And then there are many places where one needs to draw paths or lines inside of a rectangle, either from adjacent edge to adjacent edge or from semi-adjacent to an opposite side. So this is just some examples of how one can style shapes. You can then build up those styles to create more recognizable things, let's call them, that match real world items. For example, a gold coin, which is just simply a labeled circle with radii and then a circle superimposed. A pawn is just a triangle with a circle drawn at the end of one of the radii. The German cross is made up by setting notches in the corner of a rectangle and then drawing these thick black lines across it. The XOK game has these fish. This is drawn just by using radii and then superimposing another circle on top of those two radii, as well as a small dot on another radii. So fairly simple construction. A compass rose is created by doing a fill on a star shape. A slice on a star shape, and then superimposing two stars on top of each other with some rotation, and then some background images with parts of radii showing. So lines can be created and styled, not very exciting, but still useful in many parts of drawing. You can add arrows with different styles onto those lines. Polylines are lines with a series of vertices, and you specify those vertices and lines drawn between them. Lines can also provide connections between circles, so you can see examples of styled lines, and once these shapes, circle shapes, are defined, you can then specify that you want to connect to them, and they can be connected with arrows or without. Polylines can be created in other ways. The snail command is a bit complex to go into here, but it allows you to define lines relative to the previous point rather than using absolute positions on a page. This makes it quite useful to move around or draw, or to create repetitive shapes such as the square. You draw it once and then you repeat its creation. You can also very easily scale polylines drawn with the snail command. Poly shapes work in a very similar way to polylines, except you have an enclosed area which you can then fill in. Here's one drawn again using snail, which rotates over a series of points to create the star effect. And again, poly shapes can be scaled. There are a number of specialized shapes available within protograf. Starfield allows you to draw an outline and fill it with these small dots, which we call stars, different colors and sizes. Cube can be drawn just by simply shading the faces of this shape. Dice can be styled in different ways using different pips. The QR code is a way if you want to include scannable text onto the output. In this case, this QR code should link to the documentation for protograf. Tetronymos are shapes made up of 4 squares nested edge to edge, and there's about half a different kinds of tetronymos. Pentominoes are made up of similarly of 5 squares nested edge to edge, and there's 12 of those. We'll show an example of that just now. And finally, polyominoes are the most generalized form, and you can create polyominoes. The edges don't have to be adjacent, and so you can create almost a bitmap effect using that shape. Text can be styled in various ways and forms. So you can see in this example you have outlined and filled text. You can rotate the text. You can put text inside a text box and then rotate it. You can wrap and transform the text. In this case it's been converted to title case. You can use HTML styling to create even more effects in terms of how the text appears. You can use custom fonts that are installed onto your machine. You can add in inline icons and inline images into the HTML text. This is often done when you want to include special effects along cards, and those images can be sourced from SVG or even fonts that have built-in symbols into them. There's a way to specify the icon font that's used in a particular box. Apart from being included with fonts, images can also be placed directly onto the page. PNG images, SVG images, which can be rotated. You can slice those images top, middle, and bottom, or left to right. You can extract or remove parts of the image. In this case, we're rounding off the corners. You can get parts of them out as a circle, as an ellipse, or even as a polygon, or even as a multi-sided polygon. Along with shapes, protograf also allows you to do grids and other kinds of layouts. So in this case, it's just a simple green grid which emulates graph paper. You can create all kinds of hexagonal grids and set their properties, such as their numbering using alpha or alphanumeric numbering, put dots inside them, use caltrops, etc. You can also draw tracks around a board and then set properties for numbers appearing at certain intervals, or even special styling for the corner boxes if that's required. You can create abstract boards. Often those are made up of simple geometric shapes. In this case, the Go board is made up of an 18 by 18 grid, and then superimposed on that are the special points, which are created using something called a dot grid. And again, there's a 3 by 3, and those points are offset from each other. The Dejaric board, which appears in the Star Wars movies, this is created by a series of circles. The outer circle has these silver and black slices on it, and then inside that circle are these so-called center shapes. So you can superimpose any number of additional shapes inside of the circle. In this case, we're superimposing an inner circle, also with slices, and finally a small inner circle that's filled with silver right at the center. And then we're rotating those slices so that we don't start from the default position, which would be at the 12 o'clock position. Here's an example of pentominoes. They're being used to create a puzzle where they all fit together inside a rectangle. This example is sourced from a book called Imperial Earth by the author Arthur C. Clarke. You can use everything that we've seen up to now to actually do a full layout of a game. So I'm just going to zoom into the corner here, and you can see how this board's constructed. There's an underlying image of the world, a world map. Superimposed on that is a grid, and superimposed on that grid is this. You'll see portions of a track here made up of the circular shapes, as well as rounded rectangles that are, in this game, placeholders for where cards go, as well as putting various kinds of icons or images superimposed on those. So the script can be long, but it's also not complex to understand how it's put together. So here's another example of creating a map for a game. In this case, it's a game called Warp War, which is made up of an hexagonal grid. And protograf allows you to, for example, draw lines between hexagons based on their grid reference. So you can say draw a line from 1C down to 8L and then offset its position. You can obviously draw shapes and put text inside of the hexagons on the map. So very easy to style and create such a map. Finally, there's a very large section of protograf devoted towards creating cards. You can set properties for decks of cards, the designs of cards shared throughout the deck, or even individual cards that appear once. Example would be a joker. And then the data for those cards can either be stored inside the script, or it can be retrieved from an external source such as an Excel file or a Google Sheet. Cards can of course include things like paper money. This is just really, if you think about it, as a simple card printed on paper. And counters are really just small cards, tiny little cards. In this case, these are counters for a war game produced by SPI. And again, information for all of these cards or counters is stored in a spreadsheet, and then a design is used to lay them out onto each card, or in this case counter, individually. And finally, one can source information from the Board Game Geek website and retrieve information about a game. In this case, its number of players, the duration of the game, and its rating on Board Game Geek, along with a standard sort of image for that. So this would be a useful way if you've created an image or sort of created a collection on Board Game Geek to retrieve information about a whole number of games and put them on cards, maybe as a way to help track your collection. And that's it for this overview. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you watching.